I rarely speak to a person who has been a chairman of a public sector bank and a chairman of a very large private sector bank. I mean, you're a rare exception in that case. So let me ask you to tell us a little bit about this perennial debate which is on between public sector and private sector banks. And a lot of people believe that a public sector bank can never run as efficiently as a private sector entity. The financial markets value the two very differently. Give us your perspective, if you will, on how you see through your unique lens as having run both these institutions.
My book speaks for itself. In fact, my book is full of anecdotes about what hazards are there in the public sector banking. Way back in 1969, when banks were nationalized, I felt very happy that banks could have closed open branches in the interior of India. But the way in which the state controlled the banks, the state managed the banks, has always made me feel depressed. In fact, my tenure in public sector banking was very small. Then within 6 years, I left the public sector banking. I'm not counting my State Bank of India days where I was not a chairman. State Bank of India, I was working very closely with the chairman at that time. But if I count the chairmanship of the Bank of India, well, I was very happy to be in the bank and very happy to be with the people. But I just did not like the way in which the government tried to control the shaman and to control almost every day you will get a message from there to do this, to do that. That's not the way to manage the bank. And the market is right in valuing the private sector bank more than the public sector bank. It is not so much about the ownership of the public sector banks that matters. It's the way in which the state is managing the public sector banks that really gives a huge discount to the public sector banks.
Mm. Has anything changed since your time, Mr. Vaghul, you would say? Because you keep hearing these things about a tussle for autonomy for public sector bank management between the Reserve Bank and the government. There are still stories of government interference in giving out loans, etc., to this date. Do you think something fundamental needs to be done to fundamentally alter the problems that you just spoke about?
Yeah, the only way in which can be altered is for the government to step out of it. Way back, again, I'm referring to 1955 when State Bank of India was nationalized. There was an implicit agreement between the first chairman of the State Bank of India, John Mathai, who was then resigned as a finance minister to join as chairman of the State Bank of India, and between him and the government, that the government will not interfere in any business matters, and internal administration will be entirely that of the State Bank of India. Only where it mattered, public policy mattered, the government would issue a directive to the bank. That promise was broken right at the outset. Very soon after John Mathai took over, he had to resign because the finance secretary, who was then at the board of the State Bank of India, issued a directive to the State Bank of India chairman that he should do something which is totally connected with the internal administration of the bank. And John Mathai did not like it. And that continues. For a long time, Reserve Bank of India was holding the shares of the State Bank of India. And all correspondence between the government and the State Bank of India used to be through the medium of the Reserve Bank of India. Well, I worked in the chairman secretariat at the time in 1969. Even parliament questions would be sent to only Reserve Bank of India. And I was wondering why it was being sent to Reserve Bank of India was the matter pertaining to the State Bank of India. Then it was explained to me that this is the arrangement. Namely, we don't deal directly with the banks. We deal only with the Reserve Bank of India, and it is for Reserve Bank of India to deal with the banks. I had to last it only till 1969. In 1969, there is a sea change. And I think the answer to that is that today there are no options available. The state will have to get out of the banking system. And we have seen in the last 15 years, 20 years, how a few private sector banks like HDFC Bank, Axis Bank, ICICI Bank have been managed, Supertech, Mahindra. These are the banks which are really shining lights, and they should be able to give a message to the government that this is the way to go forward and not to maintain the status quo.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.